So our first presenter for the lightning talk will be Tain Barzso from University IT. So, yay. I practiced your name a lot to make sure I got it right. So, a quick little blurb on Tain. At Stanford for just over a year, Tain Barzso manages the field support team in CRC responsible for the HNS and VPTL contracts. Additionally, he enjoys an appointment as a lecturer in the Department of English, teaching a course in literary theory for video game design. Cool. He has a deep interest in educational and interactive technology and enjoys exploring new directions for the synthesis of technology and education. In his copious spare time, he enjoys writing, reading, biking, and playing with his son. So take it away, Tain.
Anywhere around here? Great, thank you. Are we on? All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. So what I want to do is just tell a little story of a recent experience that I had that I think is really going to matter, hopefully, to everybody in this room. So I've been working in IT and doing adjunct teaching for a number of years. And one of my clients is the School of HNS, and very specifically the English department. Now, I was having a meeting with our representative in the English department, and we got to talking kind of English geek shop. And one thing led to another. And she said, hey, you know about technology, you've been teaching writing, how would you like to design a course for us in the English department? And I said, fantastic. So I did put together a course, and they accepted it, and the next thing I knew, I became faculty. And so this was this was a very interesting experience. It was one that really kind of rattled my own perceptions of what it means to work in university IT, as well as see things from the other side. So it was an interesting learning experience. Now, this started off by them asking me the question of, would you like a room with technology? And I said, oh, absolutely. I'd love to have a room with technology, right? And I'm thinking haptic technology and all these screens and fantastic things happening. And to be perfectly honest, the room that they gave me was much more modest. But as somebody who, again, has done teaching and IT, I realized, okay, I should probably go into this room beforehand, check it out, get a feel for it. So I went in a couple days before with my dongle and my VGA cable, and I went in with the laptop that I was going to use, and I tested the audio system and the VHS deck. Yes, they had a VHS deck in the room. And you know, and it all worked out fairly well. In the first night, there were only a couple small problems. And I realized that most individuals, especially in this particular building, who would be using this room, would not have the time, should not be expected, and wouldn't do this. And this really brought up this idea for me of a gap. And I really do feel that there tends to be a chasm, especially at universities, always at universities actually, between technology support and the idea of teaching and learning. And we are people, all of us in this room, who really enable education, right? I mean, University IT, GSB IT, School of Medicine, Vice Provost of Teaching and Learning, you name it, we're the people who do these things. And it's not just communication, it's not just rolling out Office 365. We're the people who are the core of the university, and we can truly enable these things and have impact. And I think there are a few ways we can, and it really comes down to this idea of working with individuals. Now, as a faculty member, there's certain things that I wanted in the room. Number one, I wanted somebody who knows a little bit about everything and can connect to a little bit of everything. They have the information, and they're able to kind of go out there and consolidate it. Secondly, I wanted Spock, a single point of contact. I wanted that logic. I wanted someone to communicate, but I still want just that little bit of emotion that's there so you can relate to human beings. One thing that I wanted to avoid is playing the telephone game. I don't want to make a call, have the phone call get routed to one ticketing system, go to another phone call, to another ticketing system, round robin, and nobody knows what's going on with me, especially if I'm in a room and I'm having a really hard time. I wanted somebody who is ready to pounce at any given moment, ready to help me with my issues. And finally, all this feeds into one final concept. It's this idea of the warm handoff. So I wanted somebody who knows enough about a little bit of everything and who has those connections, consolidating all this to say, hey, and even if maybe I can't help you, I can triage that issue, pass you to somebody else throughout the university who can. Incredibly important. So that taken into account, I came up with this idea that I really think the way the university works, it's like a rocket or a missile or however you want to put it, it, right? And this is less a hierarchy and more of a paradigm. It's really more flat than anything else. But we have this payload, we have faculty, and we have research up top. Then we have things like VPTL, teaching and learning support in all the different departments. And then down here at the bottom, we have this idea of foundations, and that's what IT and that's what university IT does. We are at the core of all of this. And we can fill this gap in the middle, whether it's payload, whether it's fuel, with the basics of things like Canvas, conference rooms, just-in-time supportive technology at all different levels. And there could be a long list that could really go, because we have these core competencies. We are people with problem-solving skills, we are people with expertise, and we are people with solutions. So I think taking all this into account, if there's one thing that I think we should all take away after all of these lightning talks we're going to see today, after these breakout sessions, after all of the coffee conversations we have, it's important to understand that what we do is going to continually fuel this rocket, and what it is going to do is allow that to fly off into the stars and do amazing things. And I'm going to go ahead and give you back 14 seconds. Thank you very much for listening.
Go, George. All right. Thanks, Tain. That was very interesting. So our next presenter will be Swati Prabhu from Land Buildings and Real Estate. So let's give her a quick warm welcome. So while pursuing her master's in GIS, Swati took up a position at LBRE working on maps, fully expecting to graduate and move on to another job. Well, 15 years and 4 months later, she still remains at LBRE. She has evolved into various roles, including database analyses, web application development, full-stack platform ownership, to managing a highly functional team. Variety and new challenges have kept her journey going at Stanford, but today she is here to tell us about the journey of the online campus project. Cool. All right.
Thank you, Stacy. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Today, I'm going to talk about the campus map, the journey that we took for the development of this application. We recently launched a version of the campus map with a major redesign on the UI. It was very important for us to focus on the users as part of this redesign effort. The technology stack behind campus map is pretty complicated, multiple integrations going on that really bring together a lot of information and data. But today, we are not talking about this, although it's a fascinating topic for another day. Today, it's about the process of campus map, how we use tools and people and resources, and included the users to build this application. We truly believe it takes a village to raise a child. The journey, like all major journeys, began with defining the scope. What was it that we wanted to do with campus map? We had a sound foundation. It was very robust. What we needed was to build on mobility as well as usability of this application. In addition, we did surveys, and they do make a difference. We talked to users, and the users spoke. We didn't know they would tell us so much. It was wonderful to hear from them. We talked to UXers, web leaders, staffers mailing list, a very popular list, and multiple other groups, as well as Google Analytics. We heard about what they wanted to see. We heard about what they use currently with Campus Map, as well as what they don't use. And we wish they would, because it was a cool feature, or so we thought. We saw who were the returning users, as well as what type of devices they were using. Armed with all this information, we started making our prototypes. Our highly skilled and patient developers went through multiple iterations of prototypes. We tried out various designs and ideas and workflows and said, okay, maybe we should send this off. But not quite enough. We had not heard from the users. We needed the experts to speak to us. And here's where the community of practice UXer group came into play. This is a group that meets every week, an extremely creative set of individuals who provide a lot of great insight. We had some really positive feedback from this group. We went and met with them. Several people called in via Blue Jean sessions. We had a lot of whiteboarding sessions with them, talked through our designs, and said, what would work better? What should we do more to this application? We took their feedback and did more prototypes. We were sort of getting the drill now. Ask users, build the prototypes, and do more changes. So now, with the feedback from the UXers, we did some more design element changes, worked through it. Again, fantastic project team, kept going through it very patiently. Once we got through these, we were back. We had promised the UXers we will come back, and we did. We went back to them. They gave us some more feedback. And this time, they suggested doing usability surveys, something that our team had not done before. But we were excited, and we said, sure, we can try usability surveys. Tell us what to do. They provided some guidance to us. And then we talked to about 50 users. Probably for a usability survey, we need more than 50 users, but this was a great start. We talked to students and visitors, as well as staff members. We talked to people who came into our office. We went to people's desks. We went and camped out in front of the visitor center, ambushed the visitors. We did get a buy-in from the management, of course, the visitor center management. And then we talked to students in the field. Students are brutally honest. And if they do not shred an application to pieces, we have some hope. This might work. This was great feedback. And we asked them a lot of questions. And we were really trying to see, can you do these desired actions for us? How would you find something in the application? Where would you go next? And it was interesting to see the reaction from the users. You didn't see that big, large button? Really? And then we had to come back and retweak our designs. And now, of course, you get the drill. We were back to doing more fine-tuning, more building, a great project team again. And next, we were ready to launch the beta site. We opened it for feedback again to the web leaders, the staffers, the UXers, mailing lists, put a link on our production application. It really helped. There were people who were writing back to us and saying, hey, we are liking what you're doing now. This would be helpful to us. And then almost there. Are we there yet? Almost, but not quite. The important things. This is a highly visible and scalable application. We needed it to be stable. We used the tools and resources provided by our friends at the ISO office, scanned for vulnerabilities, made sure the security patches were in place, did a lot of performance and load testing, as well as infrastructure tuning, working with administrative systems. And then, party time. We were ready, it's alive, and it has been well accepted. The application is out there, and we would love to hear your feedback. Because for us, the journey is not over. This application is going to keep evolving, working with our users, and we would do this all over again. No more shortcuts. We're going to do this with the users, bringing them into the picture. If you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Swati. So our next presenter is Joy Su from the Graduate School of Business. So if you can have Joy come up. Looks like she's here already. It's quick. So Joy is a senior software developer at the Graduate School of Business. She loves web technologies and coding. She's developed 3 online simulations for teaching and learning this year and is looking forward to sharing and learning from others at the Unconference. She gave the D3 Lightning talk last year, and she's very excited to do it again for animation with HTML5. All right, you ready, Joy?
Hello, everyone. I'm Joy Su. And today I'm going to talk about animation with HTML5. I want to introduce you, HTML5 superhero, and his friend, Little Bunny. He showed up with a Bezier curve, if you notice. And we're going to talk about CSS and Canvas, SVG, JavaScript. So a quick note, animation. It needs to be designed. It needs to be meaningful and responsive, mobile, and you don't want to overdo it. But today, I'm going to skip all these. CSS, that's the style sheet for the web. You define the font, the color, and if you need more information, you go to this website, MDN. Today, I want to talk to you about the transition. So as you see the picture here, it has an initial state and an end state, and CSS will do the thing in between. And the other one is animation. You use the keyframes to do the job. So I'll show you an example right here. I see this page after I did a Firefox update, and usually I don't read it, but with this little cute blinking eyes, I was like, oh, that's really cute. So I kind of look into it and see how it is implemented. It's pretty simple. It used 2 images over here and used the keyframes. And then each keyframe, it changed the opacity. And every 4 seconds, that's how you see the blinking thing. So you can do that with your website, little things. This is another example I have. With the Illustrator, I have 4 frames, and then, basically with CSS, I can do this waving hand. Yeah. Canvas. If you see the HTML, basically you only see one tag, and all the core is in the JavaScript. So today I'm not going to go into details of that, but I'm going to show you an example. So these are the birds flying, and with the mouse, I actually, see the action. I think that's pretty cool. SVG, as you can see here, it's pretty readable, right? It has the tag, name, and then the attributes. And then you see it on the right side, the results. So with that, we can do things like this. You animate with the stroke dash array to see the path. And another example I have over here is, this is an Illustrator file with different layers. So in the code, you just link to those layers, and the action looks like this. So they are different layers, and they are rotate. It's cute, yeah. So with the graphics, it looked really nice. But if you have a lot of data, then D3 may be helpful in order, to do all these animation. Okay, so another library I want to introduce is called Green Star Animation Platform. It's quite powerful. It's a JavaScript library. You can do things, with a timeline and very complex animations and then coming together. This is another cool example with the control. So if I move the again, if you see the code here, it's basically embed a SVG and then use the JavaScript to do the control. Okay. There are more other libraries you can use, like D3 or SVG.js. And this page I created with Scroll Magic. So the nice thing is that you control the action by the scrolling. So this is the chart I created, the campus, and then the superhero come to Stanford IT conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy. That was pretty cool. So our next presenter is Kenneth Sharp, School of Earth, Energy, and Environmental Sciences. So a quick intro. Ken has been a software developer at Stanford for the past 15 years, starting with structural molecular biology at SSRL, then with academic computing services at the recently deconstructed Meyer Library. For the past 4.5 years, he has been with the School of Earth, Energy, and Environmental Sciences. He has developed a remote video application for SSRL, Experiment Hunches, the original WebAuth module for Drupal, and most recently integrated profiles from the new Stanford profile system into this SE3 website. Lately, he has been thinking about better ways to manage his free time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Sharp, senior web developer at the School of Earth, Energy, and Environmental Sciences. So I'm going to talk about visualizing software project tasks using preemptive priority queues and Kanban, but sort of also the journey of how I got there. This is sort of a work in progress that I'm still working out. So a lot of development methodologies out there. Everybody here probably has their favorites. My issue with these is pretty much all of the literature assumes a certain type of project team where there's a number of people, many people, or at least several people per project, everybody in a specific role, and everybody having some sort of dedicated, uninterrupted time and sprints or development cycles to do their work. My experience has been more in smaller organizations where there's multiple projects per person, less process, and multiple roles per person, and dealing with actual frequent interruptions and changing priorities, support calls, urgent projects, that sort of thing. So I've been trying to figure out a good development process or project management process. I'm a fan of Agile principles. The way we do things in these small organizations sort of organically fits very well with these principles. I like to think of it as Agile by nature. So I started looking at some Agile methodologies. Scrum is very popular right now. It's a good methodology, but it's also geared towards the bigger project. You need several people, you need time for sprints. It's not really a good fit for the smaller organization. Kanban is actually a somewhat better fit. It's based on the Japanese manufacturing methodology. It's less formal, it works with existing processes. Basically, you're managing tasks by putting them into queues. You're limiting your work in progress. It gives you a better sense of control over your workflow. But once again, the literature does not take into account the interruptions and the multiple projects per person and so forth. So I started thinking about that and came upon the idea of mapping priority queues into Kanban. And you're probably familiar with a priority queue from the airport, where the first class passengers have their special line and they get to check in before you do. There's a special case called a preemptive priority queue, where a higher priority task will actually bump the current task back into the waiting queue, and that sort of maps pretty well to what I've been looking for. So what I've started doing over the past few weeks is experimenting with a particular setup of Kanban. I'm using a web app called Kanbanery, which is very good. And the way I've organized my tasks is to set up a backlog where I have multiple projects, each tagged by a different color, and I try not to go overboard here, trying to do estimate, times or size of tasks. I just put them in there, color code them. Then I limit my work in progress with a this week queue. I try to figure out what it is I'd like to do during the week. And then I start doing my work, pulling things into the doing queue, putting them into the done queue. But I have a special queue called interrupted and a couple of special color-coded tags for when something important comes along and bumps me. So I can move a task into the interrupted queue and create a new urgent task, say, right in the doing queue, and then work on that, and then return to the interrupted queues. So just over the past few weeks, what I've discovered in doing this is that using the Kanban principles of limiting work in progress allows me to feel more in control of my workflow. Setting up the special tags and queues for the interrupts also allows me to better visualize my workflow and see what the impact is of the interrupted tasks. Seeing a growing list of done tasks actually feels pretty good, so I like that. And I'm going to keep playing with this and try to collect some data and metrics and build some better practices. So thanks for your time. Feel free to contact me, ksharp@stanford.edu.
We're going to start with Sharon Kross. She's a Drupal trainer and consultant for a bunch of different departments, at least 24 so far over the years. Currently working for a Faculty Development and Diversity Office, Language Center, CESTA, and SEED. She prepared for this vital work by earning a PhD in Scottish medieval history from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland.
That would be helpful.
Do you want to hold it, or do you want to hold it?
because I have like 17 different things going on. So, talking about Drupal's drop-in help. Yes, he already told you who I am. And I also founded Drupalers drop-in help. I can't remember if he mentioned that or not. So the origins, come on, there we go. The origins of Drupalers drop-in help was from the Drupalers mailing list, where people could ask questions and get them answered. But there's some questions that aren't all that easy to do through email. And then also Drupalers Morning of Code, which were in-person gatherings, but they're on a specific topic and are kind of had it organized on an as-needed basis as opposed to on a regular schedule. So under the banner of the Open Source Lab, I started up Drupalers Drop-In Help in January of 2011. I was prepared for the first couple of sessions to have absolutely no one show up, but to my surprise, there were at least half a dozen people on that first session, and we've held it every month since. Our 5-year anniversary is going to be in January. It's always held on the third Thursday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. in Coverley Library, large instruction room. There's only been a couple of exceptions, which I believe have all been when the IT Unconference was scheduled for the same Thursday. There's always at least one experienced Drupaler. Help is given on a one-on-one basis, although we encourage eavesdropping on other people's questions and answers. People can arrive at any time in the 2-hour period or leave as well. All levels of questions are welcome, but we don't guarantee any answers. Oh, come on. So I've been keeping some data, although I can only find it for 46 of the 58 sessions we've had. But they all pretty much followed the same pattern of about 5 to 10 attendees, except for there was a spike in summer of 2012 when we advertised it on meetup.org and the Silicon Valley Drupal users group. So we had a lot more non-Stanford people that summer. What else? So the attendance, there's been 376 attendance. Sorry, I'm losing my own thing. Attendance. So there's been 376 total visits by 179 different people, which includes 305 total visits by 139 different Stanford faculty, staff, students, alums, representing all 7 schools and most of the major administrative units. The average attendees per session has been 8.17, with the median at 8. If we extrapolate this to all 58 sessions, which is kind of dodgy, but still, probably would have been about 474 visits, and probably somewhere between 200 and 225 different people, but that's even harder to really know. So of those 179 different people, 136 visited just once in the 46 sessions for which I have records, although I know some of those people did also attend the missing sessions. Looking just at the people who visited 2 or more times, there were 43 repeat offenders. 45 timer there at the end of the tail is me. The 26 is my husband, Rob Black. There's also about half a dozen other repeat offenders, including the 18 timer, who are helpers from Stanford Web Services, who've been as supportive as they can, both before and after they were founded. They were founded about 8 months after Drupalers Drop-In, so we're roughly the same age. So the secrets of success, I think, come down to this. It's free, but valuable. It's consistent, recurring date and time, a consistent location, monthly email reminders, and on the email reminders, I have learned that if I email on the Monday, I get a lot of people. If I email on Wednesday or Thursday morning, I don't get so many people. It's also really been helped by the occasional mention in the Stanford report, which also increases the attendance those weeks. And then I think particularly important has been someone taking responsibility to make sure that it happens every single month, and it has happened every month. I've only missed a handful of sessions myself, but for those I made sure that another experienced Drupaler was available and sent out the email as a reminder. So the only complaints that I get, though, is that they don't happen often enough. People have problems more than once a month, and also people can't come on Thursdays. So Currently, it's held on a purely volunteer basis. No one department is supporting me in doing this. I'd like to have it more happen more often. So I am seeking advice, ideas, suggestions, and allies, and I have run out of time. But I will be at that table afterwards to come talk to me. Oh, yeah, my contact info. That's yours. That's mine.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Our next lightning talk is from Pamela Levine from the Graduate School of Education. Pamela comes to us from Graduate School of Education, where she's an education technology specialist and an alum. Pamela has taught in places without any technology at all, such as a Peace Corps volunteer in rural Africa, to online classes with more than 10,000 people, and in many other classrooms in between. She became interested in the potential of education technology as an elementary school teacher in Washington, D.C.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm here to clear up some common myths about ed tech. And even for those of you who aren't working specifically with classroom technologies, I think you might find some myths that apply to other technologies and other industries. So, myth 1, there's one hardware to rule them all. There are lots of well-publicized examples of blind adoption and ill-planned implementation that stem from this myth. Selecting and purchasing the right hardware do not equate to effective teaching and learning. Let me be clear, this myth absolutely applies to software too. So the biggest gap between any hardware or software's promises and its successes is how it's implemented. Myth 2, technology can replace the teacher. Education's difficult, it's expensive, and everyone needs it. Ineffective teachers are costly, and training them to be effective is difficult. Technology, on the other hand, is programmable, increasingly accessible, and scalable. That's why many have looked to it to replace teachers, but this hasn't worked so far. The MOOC craze was a good example of this, and now a few years later, our own faculty acknowledge current MOOCs pale in any comparison with face-to-face instruction by a thoughtfully invested human instructor. No education policy that has current MOOCs replacing quality classroom instruction should be taken seriously. This is a drill and practice math activity. Stanford's Scope group found that using computers as replacements for teachers in traditional drill and practice exercises has not produced greater success for students. Instead, learners make academic gains when they work with teachers alongside their online experiences. The World Bank agrees. They say experience from around the world shows us that over time, teachers' roles become more central and not peripheral as a result of the introduction of new technologies. Myth 3, today's students are digital natives. The truth is that kids' use of tech is strongly patterned along socioeconomic lines. So some social groups of students are just as digitally excluded as older generations. We need more realistic understandings of young people and tech in order to support them. If we don't bring technologies into our classroom and deliberately spend time teaching students how to use and interact with them, we're essentially widening the digital divide between the haves and have-nots. One way that my colleague and I have helped teachers build tech exposure into their classrooms is through a series of tech-enabled icebreakers that teachers can use at the beginning of a course. Myth 4, if it's slick to use, engages students, and well-intended, then it's good for the classroom. This is Class Dojo. 35 million teachers and students are using it. It's a tool for rewarding good behavior. You can see there's some red points on there. That's for kids who've been bad. It's really cute. It catches students' attention, but it flies in the face of what we know works in motivation and behavior management. Unfortunately for teachers and students using Class Dojo, the research shows that its type of rewards significantly diminish intrinsic motivation. That means that students become less likely to do these activities over time. Those red punishment points are also harmful to classroom environment. We know to evaluate sources and bias in our textbooks and curriculum. We need to be looking closely at the technology we bring into the classroom and asking, who's behind this software? Are they working with teachers or education researchers to guide design? What assumptions are built into the tool? Do they align with evidence in the field? Myth 5, it's not worth it. It is worth it. When education technology is done right, it's worth it. Students can be more engaged and learn more when 3 important variables are met. When they use technology for interactive learning, when they use technology to explore and create rather than to drill and kill, and when these uses of technology are combined with effective teacher support. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Pamela. Our next lightning talk comes from Shannon Walters from radiology. Shannon's worked here for over 7 years and currently manages Stanford's 3D and quantitative imaging laboratory. He focuses on innovation, education, clinical optimization, data analysis, and financial planning. The field of advanced visualization is a perfect fit for his interests in optimization, computing, and healthcare. And he's brought a wide array of show and tell.
Thank you for inviting me. My name's Shannon Walters. I work in the 3D and quantitative imaging lab right over here in Clark Center. It's also called just 3D Lab or 3DQ Lab. I'm here today to talk about the possibility of networking and finding common ground with other people on 3D printing because it's becoming a relevant topic, and it doesn't seem to be easy to find local information about that here. We've been exploring the capabilities in healthcare. We've provided a few models here just to show, and I'm going to stick around afterwards for anybody who's interested. We're more specifically interested in printing, replicating current patient anatomy to help surgeons guide their procedures or decision making. Other people around here may be interested in using it for others. But once you start looking into it, you realize it's quite an expensive hobby / concept to get into. You're talking up to $500,000 for a printer. So we've reached this wall where we want to move forward, but we're trying to figure out what resources are currently available because it's not clear what the right path is at this point. The dream state for me, what everything would be like in 2 years, 3 years from now, is that everybody who needs access to 3D printing resources can get it. If they already exist, there's a website that says where you can go, what printers are available. If nothing exists, there's a group of people who get together and figure out what meets their needs. We would share the resources so that we wouldn't waste all that money on printers that might just sit there and be latent for many weeks at a time. I know of one of the 3D printers over at Canary that kind of meets that description. It would be nice to use it, but it's too far away and people can't get to it. I would like to create a community that exists to share the knowledge because it's very specific knowledge to operate these printers and understand how to design the models to print structurally. And that extends beyond IT into material property specialists as well. And then obviously if there were anything created out of this, it would need to generate some kind of revenue on some level to cover the costs. There might be lots of 3D printers out there that I just don't know about. I have looked around. I've researched through Stanford as much as I can. I found this one in the product realization lab, but it's for students only. I operate a clinic that supports the hospital. I'm not allowed to use that. It's just for students. So I hear about labs like the Radiological Science Lab has a 3D printer over at Canary Center. That's not feasible for me to go all the way over to the Canary Center to do that. And so there may be a lot of printers available, and if that's the case, I think that's great. I just like to coordinate it and figure out who they all are, get an inventory, and make some kind of community where we can share our knowledge and understanding. I'm not sure what can operational units do if the benefit is unclear and the costs are high. I think that there has to be a business case for anything like this, and I'm interested in working with other people to help define what that business case is and make this a reality. We will probably pursue 3D printing even if we don't find other people who are interested, but that would be maybe the first step towards other people getting interest as well. Currently, we've been outsourcing all of our 3D prints to a couple of local companies, Studio Fathom and Proto Cafe, which is not far away, and even places like 3D Systems, the medical modeling division, where they print it over in Colorado and ship it to us. If we do have current printing resources, I wouldn't mind knowing where they are and getting an inventory, seeing if people are willing to share those resources and collaborate, finding a way to organize that. And I think that's really the IT aspect of this, is organizing all of this information and defining who the players are and how to schedule time on the printers. And if it doesn't exist, figure out who's interested, where we can find a common ground, what kind of printers we need, where's the demand, and what space is available to make this happen. If anybody's interested in pursuing this topic and discussing it, I'm happily volunteering myself to take a step in that direction and figure out what I can do to make this a reality. Again, our primary interest is creating models of the human body. This is an example of a before the surgery and an after the surgery. This is a post-surgical head with all the teeth and everything. This is the direction we want to bring 3D printing, and we would like lots of options of all these kind of printers, but each of these printers costs about $300,000 or $400,000. So we wouldn't be using them all the time, so the business case isn't there just yet for us. But if we can find other people who also need 3D printing, that might be an easier possibility. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you, Shannon. Our final lightning talk presenter for the afternoon is Caryl Westerberg from Stanford Web Services. Caryl attended the first IT Unconference in 2011. At that time, Caryl had just applied to work at Stanford Web Services. Picking a table at random, she managed to sit next to Jim Knox, who at the time was managing Web Services. A couple months later, Caryl found herself working under Jim, and she's been with Stanford Web Services ever since.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that introduction. Yes, I've been at Stanford. I'm a web producer at Stanford Web Services. I'd like to start with a little story. This is Sally. She's a great administrator, great problem solver. People she manages adore her, and they flourish under her management. She knows she has great potential, and she wants to move up in her career. And she knows that if she needs to move up in her career, she needs to do some public speaking. Yeah, she doesn't like public speaking. Then a friend told her about Stanford Toastmasters, or about Toastmasters. Well, she went and visited a club where they provided a safe and supportive place for her to practice speaking. So she joined, and then she practiced speaking at every meeting. Along the way, she became a club leader, she got to practice leadership skills, and lo and behold, she felt comfortable with public speaking. Yeah, let's hear it for Sally. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay, I'm Caryl Westerberg, web producer for Stanford Web Services. I'm also a competent Toastmaster, also known as a competent communicator. Vice President of Education for Stanford Toastmasters. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Who here has heard of Toastmasters? I'm impressed. Okay, who knows anything about it? Wilson, I know you do. He's a member of the club. So Toastmasters actually has clubs all over the world, and their goal is to teach leadership and speaking skills. The idea is that you can go in, you can learn these skills in a goal-oriented, self-paced manner. Toastmasters has two educational tracks. They have a leadership track and a communications track. As a new member, you go in and you will give speeches, of course. The way it works, though, is it's kind of like Boy Scouts. You know how you go through a merit badge system and then eventually you get Eagle? Here, you go through an award system and you get various awards. So let's look at this. After 10 speeches, you can get Competent Communicator. 10 more speeches, you get Advanced Communicator Bronze, Advanced Silver, and Gold. You also have a leadership track where after you do 10 projects, one of which may be serving as a club officer, you get a designation of competent leader. You do more projects, you become Advanced Leader Bronze, Advanced Leader Silver. Then at the end of all this, once you finish both tracks, you get a Distinguished Toastmaster, and that's the highest award that Toastmaster can bestow. I've actually met people with multiple DTMs, go figure. This is an example of an agenda from a Toastmasters meeting. You can see it's packed, and it's marked down to the minute. Each meeting has prepared speeches, impromptu speaking, they call it table topics, and evaluations. You also have roles like table topics master, timekeeper, grammarian, counter, and the like. Each of those roles has a speaking opportunity. So basically, everybody gets a chance to speak during the meetings. Stanford has 2 clubs. There's Lee Emerson Bassett, actually founded in 1935 by a Stanford professor. They meet in the Graduate School of Business, 7:15 to 9 on Wednesdays. And we have Stanford Toastmasters, and that's the club I belong to. This club was chartered two years ago this month. In fact, we're celebrating at our next meeting our 2nd year anniversary. It was designed to be for staff, but we do welcome all Stanford community. So Stanford Toastmasters meets the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of every month at noon, usually in the Green Earth Sciences building at room 365. That's the one that's over the arch. Sometimes we have to meet other places. Sometimes we have to adjust the time for to accommodate the meeting space. And we have a website listed here if you have any questions or want to check it out. Also, you can contact me. My name is Caryl Westerberg. And I'm cjwest@stanford.edu.
All right, thanks, Caryl. That's a great set of lightning talks for our afternoon. At this point, however, we're done with lightning talks. It's time for us to move on to the wrap-up of today's Unconference. What we do here is we get our representatives from all of the sessions that occurred that decided they wanted to be represented at the wrap-up, had something to share with the entire community. And you're going to have 30 seconds to give us the title of the session that you attended and any interesting takeaways. So if I could ask those spokespeople who are interested in sharing with us to please come on up now and stand up next to the stage. You can. I don't know a thing about it. So we're going to have just the time slots. For, yeah, we're not worrying about ordering here. We're just, if you were at a session that decided they wanted to share more with us, come on up, and we'll line up.
Let's have everybody line up on this side.
I know, but we're not going to read everything.
What's that?
No, but it says who's talking. That's okay. People can identify. All right. Before we get started, we have one more avenue that people may wish to use to get in communications with people who they met here at the event. We've got a Slack channel. That's Slack with a K to differentiate it. So you can see the URL up here. Go ahead and connect to that, and you'll be able to join a channel for the Unconference attendees and share your experiences that way. It's an instant messaging and collaboration platform that we find very effective. So with that, let's have our representatives come on up, introduce yourself, introduce your channel, or introduce your session topic, stand with your toes on there, and let us know what you got.
Thanks. I'm Aaron Cole. I was in the Slack talk first thing this morning that was led by Greg Mercer, who may or may not be here. It was a super well-attended conference or talk. I just wanted to put out there, we're all assuming everybody knows what Slack with a K is. It's basically just chat. It's online chat that seems to have taken the Valley by storm. It's a great way for teams to communicate. And so a bunch of us got together to talk about how we're using it. We all seem to be using it to see how it works and doesn't work. One message I wanted to get out is that somebody has already set up a Slack team that everybody here can use. If you go to stanfordcop.slack.com, you can sign in with your Stanford email address. And then within that, there are channels. And we've set up, there are channels per cop. So that's just a great way to play around with Slack. Two things I want to talk about real quick. One, signing in is not the best thing. Go to the bottom, create an account. Two, the Slack is divided up into teams, and the question is, when is a team too big or too small, and how do you export data, import data? And I believe there are notes.
Thank you. All right, 30-second summary.
I'm going to take I'm on two groups. So I'm Gerald Bose from Technology Consulting Group. My particular one was the Grand Unified Sysadmin Database. The results of this were that I'm in the process of making a console database that is focused on system administration and operation. The medical school is writing one that is more focused on security and compliance, and that what's our new ServiceNow also has a lot of ways to manage relationships and attributes of machines. So the takeaway was, we're going to talk to each other and try to do less inefficient waste of time.
All right, what's the next session?
I was also part of the AFS, where is it going? The takeaways were that currently we have about 50 terabytes of infrastructure built on AFS. AFS was developed, and then there was a brain drain, and now no one owns it and no one's taking care of it. There's some tension about, are we going to go forward on something that isn't supported, or there is a supported version with two guys that a lot of people are really nervous about, and what other options do we have, and we're not sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm Phil Farrell, and I led a session on staff transitions, how to preserve and transmit knowledge, experience, and relationships. We had quite a good turnout, lots of ideas. Basically, the kind of takeaway was that people need, obviously, to document their workflows and that, but the why of what you do and the who you do it with seem to be more important than the how you do it, because people can figure out how to do things. So that was one of the big takeaways. There's also some good ideas about when you have a transition. If you have both people, you can do shadowing, you can do interviewing as ways to transfer knowledge. And finally, since transitions are inevitable, we should all be doing this kind of work right now about our workflows and not waiting until we need to replace someone.
Well,
I'm Bernard Hecker, and we did a session on assessing the productivity of development teams. Some of the attendees do time tracking. Most did not. There was a lot of variation in granularity of recording as well. We talked a lot about Agile and Kanban and how both provide metrics and methods that can be used to form some part of the assessment of productivity. We talked about the volatility and task sizing, and also changes in velocity over time from a Scrum standpoint. We also talked about there being considerable variability in how Agile is adopted, and frankly, even whether a lot of these so-called Scrum teams are calculating velocity and doing burn-down charts and so forth. We talked about how productivity is closely related to value, so that 10 hours...
Sorry, 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm John Bickar. I facilitated the session on Drupal 8. It's coming. It's being released next week. I am told that it will have the words "Don't Panic" written in large friendly letters on the cover. Nobody at the university is really ready to run Drupal 8 yet, but if you're running Drupal 6 anywhere, you should start preparing to get rid of those sites or do something with them over the next 12 months.
Hello. I'm David Tom. John Holloman and I did a workshop on running a Lean UX workshop, so get meta. There's notes in the session notes have a script on how to do it yourself and some background material as well.
I'm JB Christie. I led a talk on WordPress sharing. We learned that Noah here is developing a WordPress hosting option on AWS. It's in beta, and if you go to the notes section, you can learn how to contact him. We also discovered the need for community, so I want to plug our community of practice. If you go to wpcop.stanford.edu, I will try to update that site with relevant information. And we meet on typically the fourth Thursday of every month, but because of the holidays, it'll be the third Thursday this month and next month.
I'm Michael Fox from Land Buildings and Real Estate. I led a session this afternoon on working anywhere and mobility solutions, shared some of our experiences within LBRE with a very targeted solution for our mobile maintenance workers that maintain and operate the campus, and some key takeaway and lessons learned from that is the importance of making a technology solution available to them in a very open way that allows them to explore the capabilities and discover what works best for their own purposes rather than being prescriptive about deploying that. And now turning our focus to how to extend that to everybody else, and the importance of understanding some of the barriers to adoption and concerns that people have and addressing some of the cultural limitations there.
Hi, I'm John Pilot. I led a session on the future of web authentication and identity management at Stanford. Wanted to get the message out that the university is on the crux of needing to make several decisions about the future of web authentication, including the potential replacement of WebAuth and WebLogin as they currently exist. We talked about a lot of future potential enhancements in the identity system, in particular the way that groups and organizations are expressed, and the need for a community-supported and community-sourced directory where applications from around campus can contribute information to a central store that can then be re-expressed.
Hi, I'm Megan Miller from Shared Services, University IT. So I led a session on introducing service experience design, and it was great. We had lots of great discussion about what is a service, how do these projects actually look, and you can connect with the service design community of practice. If you go to cop.stanford.edu, we're listed there under all the communities. And if you join us on Slack at stanfordcop.slack.com.
Hi, I'm Steve Kalistad with University IT. I work with application support, and I'm here to talk about Zhushan Fang's talk. It was entitled Emerging Tech, Anchorage, a Docker Cluster, How It's Built. Anchorage is a production Docker cluster that exists in AWS. So we talked about the architecture, some of the pain points of putting together that architecture, the technology behind it, and ways that she is using it. So.
Hi, my name's Alex Keller. I work for the School of Engineering. Michael Duff volunteered me to give the report on the future of IT security at Stanford. It was a lively and open-ended discussion with a lot of different perspectives represented. I just wrote down a couple bullet points that I'll share with you. One was usability. Security needs to be as seamless as possible to make adoption attractive. Transparency, so requirements, classifications, it needs to be clearly communicated and succinct. Somebody in the audience said it needs to fit on one screen of a mobile phone if you're providing a specific instruction. I thought that was a thoughtful comment. More support for distributed IT when it comes to these security endeavors. And finally, security does not trump the core mission of the university, teaching, learning, and research. But we should also be mindful that they don't fundamentally contradict each other either. Thank you. And I believe we do have notes.
So I took I've been volunteered to do Marla's session, Office 365 Challenges and Solutions. No tomatoes were thrown. The COP started about 3 weeks ago. We discussed challenges and best practices, differences between operating systems and devices. Office365.stanford.edu is a huge takeaway. Please remember that when you have questions about Office 365, office365.stanford.edu. We talked about known issues, recommendations. Office365.stanford.edu was a recommendation. And iOS and using of Outlook app, and I don't care. And no, so, and when reporting issues, one of the biggest advices was please include your operating system, whether or not you're using OA or the client, and the version. Thank you.
Hi, Myrene from HNS IT. So I led 2 sessions. The first one was gender and IT. That was a lively session. We had a smaller crowd than last year, but still great contributions. I presented the findings from the surveys that we took, and we had discussions about what is happening now that people are seeing, what are we doing, suggestions that we gave to each other, as well as just suggestions we would like to see from leadership about getting more females, especially in high level of leadership. Second topic was Tableau. Notes for both of my sessions are on the session notes. The gender one is pending just clearance given the sensitive nature of the topic. The second topic was Tableau, and that again was a very lively conversation. We had some basic questions of what is Tableau, who are the users, why would you use it, to does it do this, and how can you schedule, and yada yada yada. Put all of the notes online, as well as links to free and paid for training, as well as the community of practice, and the tech briefing video that was given, as well as future plans of training here on campus. So take a look at the notes, and then also feel free to email me on either of those topics, as well as the broader community. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Philippe Duroy from the ISO, and I led the talk about the endpoint compliance. And for those people who still had questions about it, I was glad to see that it was actually a small group, so maybe we don't have too many problems with people understanding what needs to be done. The questions that were most important were around the exception process. It's usually about 1 node, and if you have more than 10, then you can submit that as an Excel spreadsheet, and we can give you the form for that. It's a 1-year length, and the renewal is still manual. There is a best practice for compliance that we'll publish on the security.stanford.edu rapidly.
Hi, I'm John Thompson from the GSB, and I facilitated the session on collaboration with Colin Jones. We figured out that we don't know what we don't know. So what do we do about that? We talked a lot about tools, Slack, Jabber, Blue Jeans. We talked a lot about how to connect with people. We talked about how to find all the channels that you don't know about, so the newsletters and the email lists and things like that. And so the outcomes of that is a channel on the Slack that's been mentioned, and also we're going to try to meet more regularly at different times.
Hey, my name is Adam Todd with the Information Security Office. I gave a talk, well not gave a talk, but I led a discussion on high risk at Stanford, high risk systems now and in the future, and what that looked like. The takeaways were we need to do more with data storage and make that standard, easier to use, more awareness about that, more awareness about high risk data, give people environments where they can do high risk activities that are easy to stand up and move custom utilities or whatever they need over, but is standard across the university, and outreach. If that talk summarized what ISO would do next year, it would be the year of outreach. And that was about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Winston, Slack without a K. I facilitated, I suppose, a session on software support for Scrum, which turned out to be a more general discussion. And there are notes about various points that arose. The answers to my particular questions were, everybody who's using software they like for their product backlog is using Jira, and They like it because it does exactly what they want because they customized it. Right. Time.
Hi, I'm Christina. Did a session on legal and ethical issues in web scraping and collecting data, and main takeaways were that researchers have a different risk assessment profile than the university does regarding this, and that you can get into trouble doing this, especially being at Stanford, because the university is a target because it has money, so be careful, among other things. We had a lot of unanswered questions too. Oh, and follow the rules.
All right, that sounds like our last session wrap-up. I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's been a lot of fun. I hope everyone here has met someone new, learned something new, had a good time doing it. And with that, I'm happy to adjourn the 2015 Stanford IT Unconference. Thanks everyone for attending.
And also thank all the planning committees for making today's possible, and thank you all for sticking out today.